You know, there are a few times in movie history, especially horror movie history, when you have an original cool first movie come out, and then the sequel comes out and tries to go bigger, badder, better, and everything that it does totally eclipses the success of that first movie. This is not one of those times. So Hatchet II tells the story of Marybeth surviving the events of the first Hatchet movie, going back into the swamps armed to the teeth with mercenaries and hunters and gator hunters, trying to finally take down the vengeful spirit of Victor Crowley. Alright guys, just like last month, this is a Patron-sponsored review. So Kelly Farrell is a fan of the Hatchet series. Last month she wanted me to review the first Hatchet. This month she wants me to review the second Hatchet, and unless she changes her mind, I'll be reviewing Hatchet 3 next month. So thank you so much, Kelly, for your continued support for this channel and for what I do. I appreciate it very much. And if you guys want to check out my Patreon and join Kelly in all the fun, the link is right here and down in the item description below the video. Just go ahead and click that, guys. I got a lot of exclusive content over there, and I also have exclusive privileges like this, where if you join a certain tier, you can choose a movie or a topic for a video for me to do just for you. So thank you, Kelly, and let's talk about Hatchet 2. So I was actually kind of surprised how much I enjoyed the first Hatchet movie. It's by no means a classic to me. I definitely had some criticisms of it, but it was an enjoyable enough horror comedy, and I do title it a horror comedy even though the movie thinks that it's a straight up horror movie when it's not. It was just a fun little goofy slasher movie that was just a big splatterfest, tons of gore, tons of nudity, a lot of jokes here and there, most of which landed, some of which fell pretty flat, but a fun movie nonetheless that I honestly wouldn't mind revisiting. Now we get into this movie, and I was expecting this movie to be better because I was kind of talking about Hatchet on Killer Flicks and a few other groups whenever I reviewed the first movie, and more than a lot of people said that Hatchet 2 was actually their favorite of the series. Hatchet 3 seemed to be in the runner-up in that, and the least amount of people seemed to like the first movie, so I figured we had nowhere to go but up in this franchise, and holy shit was I wrong. But before I get into why, let's talk about the positives of Hatchet 2. So right off the top, I think it was cool that we got to see more from the character of Reverend Zombie, and I really like that name, and it does sound like a character that belongs in a Rob Zombie movie. But Tony Todd's character, I'm glad we got to see a little bit more of him. He's a very iconic presence in horror movies. He's a very iconic person in horror history, so seeing more of this guy never hurts to have that in your movie. Speaking of horror alumni, I thought it was cool that we got to see Tom Holland in this as Uncle Bob. If you don't know who Tom Holland is, he's the guy who directed not only the first Child's Play, but he directed the original Fright Night, two of my favorite horror movies of all time, and it was cool to see him in this role. He doesn't add too much to the movie as far as acting talent, but as far as kind of a familiar face and adding some horror alumni and adding some flavor in there for horror fanatics like me, I liked his addition. And the biggest positive really is a scene in particular. I loved the expansion of the backstory and the tragedy and the lore of Victor Crowley. That was one of my biggest positives for the first movies. I thought it had a really tragic and cool backstory for your killer. In this movie, they make it even crazier. They add a lot more elements as far as the way that his father, played again by Kane Hodder, kind of adds more into his backstory and has a little bit more to do with why he's cursed and why he's a ghost roaming around this Louisiana swamp and taking people out. I thought it was a really cool direction. I thought the scene was actually really creepy, especially whenever the wife stands up. Pretty decent little scare there, which was nothing that I had in the first movie. I was not scared at all, so kudos for that. And I just like backstory for your killers as long as it's a good backstory. So if you can expand on that and not take away from the first movie, you're doing something right, and I thought they did it right in this. Now, as far as the negatives, basically everything else. I thought that the acting was horrible in this, not to the point where it's even comedic like it was in the first movie when you had a little bit of bad acting, but it was played up for jokes. This was just bad acting all around. And going along with that, Danielle Harris was in this movie, and I feel like they included her just to have some more horror alumni because she's the little girl from Halloween 4 and 5. She was in the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. And to be honest with you, I may get shot for saying this, I think she was a step down from the girl who played Marybeth in the first movie. Tamara Feldman was a little bit better in the role. I think that she gave emotion a little bit more. I think she was a little bit more entertaining to watch. I thought she was very good in the role for what the movie required, so I really don't feel like it was a necessary recasting at all. And I don't know any behind the scenes. I don't know if maybe that girl just wanted to leave the movie, or if they booted her in favor of getting a familiar face like this, or to add some horror alumni. I have no idea what the motivation for the decision was. If you know, let me down below. Maybe it was just something that had to happen, but if it was a conscious choice by the director, I think it was a mistake. And holy shit, speaking of bad acting, the fucking chicken and biscuits guy, that's what I call him.
Chicken and gravy and biscuits and chicken and gravy and the chickens with the biscuits on the gravy with the biscuits and the chicken.
What was that? And one of the reasons why I hated his character was also a gigantic negative throughout this movie. The humor in this takes a fucking nosedive. Not a single joke in this movie made me even smirk. I mean, it lands flat at every single turn for me. There was nothing creative, nothing humorous, nothing inventive, or even mature about the humor in this movie. It just seemed like it was just written in about 3 days and then they started shooting. It was terrible. And as a result of that humor being so weak, none of the characters in this movie are that entertaining at all. You don't care if any of them live. You don't really even have that much investment in following them around. You're really just waiting for Victor Crowley to take them out in some creative ways, which leads to another negative in this movie, which is a huge shame because it was a big positive in the first movie. I thought the kills sucked in this. They ramp up the gore, they ramp up the intensity of it as far as how creative they try to get with the kills, but they go so far over the top and so far into the stupid that every single kill in this movie was so silly to me. There was no good kills like the first 2 kills in the first movie that really just hit you in the face like, holy shit, this is gonna be a gory ass thrill ride. No, this movie was just like splat stick joke, silly kill, silly kill, silly kill, and I didn't enjoy it at all. I didn't think that the ramped up gore, the ramped up intensity of the kills made them better in the least. I felt like it just took it way too far over the top, and it was hard for me to enjoy it at all. And my last negative for this movie, which is something that I didn't think that they could do any worse than they did in the first movie, because despite the fact that I liked the backstory for the character, I hated the look of Victor Crowley and the design of the character in the first movie. He looks even worse in this movie. Even worse. And I'm worried what he's gonna look like in Hatchet 3, because that's one thing that's just so distracting for me. I cannot get scared, intimidated, or even engaged in watching this guy take people out if he just looks so ridiculous. There's no amount of badass that Kane Hodder can bring to that role to hide that horrible design. And with that being said, there's not really anything else I need to say about this movie. I did not enjoy it at all. I would not be revisiting this movie. There was nothing really about it aside from those couple of things that I had to kind of grasp at that I really liked about this movie. Everything else was a huge disappointment, a huge nosedive, and a huge step down from the first movie, which is still just kind of a guilty pleasure movie for me. So we'll see if I like Hatchet 3 a little bit more. If I don't, then I'm never gonna recommend this franchise as a whole. I'll just tell people to watch the first movie and don't bother with the rest. So sorry, Kelly, if I disappointed you. I don't know if this is your favorite of the franchise or not. And all you guys, if this is your favorite of this franchise, please tell me down below, because I don't get it. So even though I enjoyed the first movie, I'm sorry, I cannot recommend seeing this movie at all. I feel like it was a giant waste of 90 minutes. I feel like it was just generic filmmaking. And overall, I'm gonna have to tell you to skip it. So what do you guys think of Hatchet 2? Is this your favorite of your So what do you guys think of Hatchet 2? Is this your favorite of the franchise or your least favorite of the franchise? Or do you like all of them equally? Put your thoughts on this franchise, Victor Crowley, and especially Hatchet 2 down in the comment section below, and we'll talk about it. Be sure to check out my Patreon page, guys, and you can join Kelly in the fun and choosing videos for me to do either on a one-time basis or a monthly basis, depending on what tier you subscribe to. And it's a great way to support this channel, great way to help this channel grow, and I really appreciate everybody that goes over to check that page out. So go ahead and do that, guys. Check out my social media links down below as well. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.